So welcome to the 2025 Housing Roundtable discussion. My name is Elisa Sandoval. I'm the Community Development Director for the town of Concord. I am filling in today for Liz Rust, who usually convenes these meetings. So welcome everybody. Happy to be here to talk about housing. And I think at this point we want to do a roll call of the different committees and boards that are attending today. So I think we'll start with the Concord Housing Authority.
So Stefan Bader here. I'm the chair. I'm on Zoom. I cannot see too well, but I think who's in the audience there. But I will call the roll. Anyway, we'll see who responds. I'm here, Stefan Bader, the chair, and Stephanie Kroback, vice chair.
She's here.
She's here. She's waving from the audience. Thank you. B. Fosek?
No.
No.
Not here. Ed Larner? Here. Is here?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Ed. And Rick Eifler?
Rick's here.
Rick's here. So we have 4 out of 5 members here. We have a quorum for the Housing Authority.
Okay, great. So next committee, or the Concord Housing Development Corporation, if you can call a roll.
Yes, this is Julie McClure for the Concord Housing Development Corporation. May I have a roll call of members present? I see Peter Lowett. Here. I see Ray Andrews. Here. And I am looking for other members, but I believe that is a quorum for us. Thank you.
Excellent. So next we have the Concord Municipal Affordable Housing Trust.
Keith Bergman, chair of the trust, and I see that all 7 trust members are either in the room or on the call. Mary Hartman.
Here.
Mike Lawson.
He's muted.
Okay. Rich Feely. Here. Linda Escobedo.
Present.
Carrie LaFleur. Here. Matt Johnson.
Present.
And Keith Bergman. Thank you, all present.
And I'm sorry I was muted, Keith. I am here.
Thank you. You're everywhere, Mike. Thank you.
Great. So next we have the Concord Housing Foundation.
Okay, Rich Feely, Chair. Since we're not a public agency, this isn't me. Matt is on the board. I don't see anybody else here on the board. Anyhow, it's not either here.
Okay, great. So next, the Select Board.
Yes, I see that we have a quorum. Mary Hartman, Chair of the Select Board. Wendy Ravelli. Terry Ackerman. Here. Cameron McKenna. Great. And Mark Howell will join us in maybe 10 minutes.
Great. So next we have the Planning Board. Is there anyone from the Planning Board here?
Here.
Okay. It's not a quorum, but
Sue Phelps,
okay.
Linda, and Sue.
Okay. Great.
Good.
And the Community Preservation Committee. So 2.
Eve and Ed.
That's not a quorum, though. And then we have the MCI Advisory Board. So if you can let me know who's here from the Advisory Board.
Peter Lowe.
Okay. Great.
Dan Gainsborough.
Yeah, Dan's online.
Great.
Yes, I'm here.
This is Erin Kosker. I'm also online.
Excellent. So I think now we'll turn to Keith to provide an update on the subsidized housing inventory.
Just the sound of adding a unit to the subsidized housing. There's usually construction involved. Yeah. All right, so I'm going to, I'm on the Zoom call, so I will share the screen. And I should I'll also say that the slide deck that I'm showing was distributed to the committee chairs and who prior to the meeting, and I know the trust has them, and they are available at the trust's website. So when I go through them quickly, because we only have 5 minutes, and we have a hard stop of 6:30 for this meeting, by the way. So, and thanks to Elisa for convening our meeting. This is all of us. This is the Concord Housing Roundtable, the 4 groups with housing in their name, plus the Select Board, Planning Board, and Community Preservation Committee. And we welcome the MCI Concord Advisory Board to this meeting. Affordable housing has a lot of definitions, so here are some with 2025 income limits for Concord, which I won't read to you, but here they are as a reference. Community preservation funds are a category that can spend up to 100% of AMI. Units that are deed restricted, I should have started at 80%, up to 80% can count on the subsidized housing inventory. Other definitions, federal ARPA funds, we have a limit of 120% of AMI. Concord's PRD zoning and the home rule petitions that we filed to fund the trust are at 150% of AMI, and workforce housing. So, and we update that schedule annually with the new income limits. Concord's subsidized housing inventory is currently at 13.34%. That's a new number. You may not have seen it before. Some of them you've seen in a number of iterations of this slide. We fell below 10% back in 2023, down to 9.97% when the 2020 census kicked in. That opened the door for 240Bs, Novo approved last year and Thorough last month, which brought us to 16.12%. We weren't there long. On April 17th, Novo fell off because they had not pulled their building permit within 1 year. That brought us to 13.32, and we went up a couple of hundredths of a percentage point with the 2 Assabet River Bluff rental units, and we're going to hear a lot more about that project later. When Novo does pull its building permit, our subsidized housing inventory will go to 16.15%, but only 7.24% of our year-round housing stock would be affordable at that level. We'd have 519 affordable units, which includes 46 that are deed restricted at levels that do not count on the subsidized housing inventory because they're workforce housing. And we would need 199 more to reach what I'm thinking of as a bragging rights goal of what if 10% of our housing stock were actually capital A affordable. And that number is 718, which is 10% of 7,172. So that is a number that we're putting out there and that we'd like to have some further discussions about. The Housing Production Plan that was adopted in 2022 by the Select Board and Planning Board remains our principal affordable housing document. The Roundtable is collectively charged with coordinating the implementation of the strategies in that plan. Our focus is not just on how funds are spent, but also on what regulatory measures should be enacted for the market to produce affordable units. With the closure of MCI Concord, the housing groups asked our Regional Housing Services Office to draft an informational update to the Housing Production Plan, sort of a shorthand to note changes in in local circumstances since 2022, so that when DCAM and others are looking at our policy documents, there are a few important things that have happened even since the plan. The census data was issued, we approved MBTA zoning, we had 2 40Bs, and importantly, there have been launched 2 once-in-a-generation initiatives by the town of Concord itself, which will, the MCI Concord, what I would like to start calling MCI Concord/Junction Village, that together with the land use matrix, which looks at all the other opportunities, including 2229 Main Street, that those 2 initiatives, something's going to happen from those in the coming years, and we're just holding up our hands to say that we'd like some of the housing that gets produced to be affordable. We have a separate agenda item on this, so I might steal some of the time now in my initial 5 minutes, just to say that the Trust is working with the Massachusetts Housing Partnership this year. We got mindful of all of these opportunities we're facing now, we have MHP technical assistance to work with the Trust to sort of refresh our local goal setting, to better use our limited funds at the local level to leverage outside development. We're learning more about how does affordable housing work? What does a project need to look like in order to successfully attract outside funding? We have a draft mission statement, strategies, and we're putting forward this aspirational goal of 200 additional units at levels of up to 150% of AMI. We're proposing to make up our own goal of what's affordable, so it wouldn't just be 80%. We're going for up to workforce housing because that reflects an important goal that the Select Board has put out there. Here's a summary of projects the Trust has funded thus far, towards which we committed $3.1 million. For each, you see how much we put in, how much other local funds were put in, how many units were created or supported, and what the per unit subsidy is based on all local funding, not just the Trust, but also CPA funding and other town appropriations and donations. The Trust has received a total of $5.2 million since 2019, when the town started putting money aside for us. These columns show our sources of funding. ARPA funds, we have $500,000 that's earmarked for 91B Main Street for 120% of AMI. We have $1.5 million in community preservation funds, I'll say thus far, and we have $3.1 million in general fund appropriations, including earned interest income. June annual town meeting will be asked to approve another $740,000 for community housing funds, and we're grateful to the support of the CPC and to the town voters for the funding we've received. And for the future, so we don't have to rely exclusively on local funding, the town is continuing to pursue state approval for real estate transfer fee and building permit surcharge that we estimate might yield some $2 million per year for households of up to 150% of AMI. That's what we're shooting for. So thanks again to everyone in this room for your advocacy and leadership, and I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Keith, do you or anyone know when a guesstimate when Novo might pull their building permit?
Yeah, the question was, does anyone know when Novo will pull its building permit? And the best information might, if Rich Feely wants to stand at the microphone and offer what he knows, that might be helpful.
I talked to the project manager about 6 weeks ago. The issue is funding. and the uncertainty involved with both interest rates and construction costs. They have proceeded some way with their detailed drawings, I believe. He wouldn't give me a date, and I think we just need to have Alyssa have a chat with him every 6 weeks, 2 months, and see where they are. They're certainly committed to doing it, but you know, if you read the papers, they're not the only project that's on hold because nobody's sure what the future looks like.
Thank you. Cameron?
Hi, Cameron McKenna. Just following up on that, do they have a time limit
No.
on when so they can wait
There's
forever?
no time limit. The only time-sensitive thing is that they fell off the SHI after 1 year because they hadn't pulled their building permit. If they were to pull a building permit, they would then have 18 months to get their certificate of occupancy before they again fell off the SHI because they weren't complete. But projects Christopher Heights, Junction Village, was approved in 2016. It was on the subsidized housing inventory. It fell off after a year, and it never came back, and it was never, and I think it finally died in 2021.
Gotcha. Okay. And then just while I'm here, I had a different question, if it's okay.
Yeah.
So the 16%, I'm just trying to understand.
Yes.
You're saying, hey, with 16% or 13.3 or 16.15 affordable housing, but that's not really affordable housing, is it? And so you have a different definition, which is 7.8.
Yeah.
Is the 7.8 sort of this is our own Concord's definition of what we think affordable housing is, or is it because it sounds like the state definition of affordable housing is the 13.3 and the 16.15. Is that correct?
Well, the state's definition of what's on the subsidized housing inventory is it is a combination of affordable and market rate. So that in order to get on the SHI, the unit has to be countable under the state regulations, and the state allows for a rental 40B, where 25% of the units are affordable at up to 80%. The remaining 75% of the units are market rate, but they get counted. So what we're looking at is that, and I can't figure out how to work the computer to show you the slide again, but the 16% is a nested stack bar graph that you've got lots of rentals that are market rate, and you've got a lesser number of deed restricted as affordable ownership and rental units. And so what we're doing is looking specifically at ownership, at affordable units, but also expanding the definition that the subsidized housing inventory looks at. And we're saying if it's deed restricted at any level, not just up to 80%, but is also workforce housing, we ought to take credit for that too. That we already have 46 units that are deed restricted at between 100 and 150% of AMI. Those exist. Those don't show up on the subsidized housing. Those don't show up in the 16% figure at all. But that's an important number to reflect, I think, to reflect a way to show progress on addressing the Select Board's workforce housing goal by counting it, establishing a baseline, and then showing how much more to achieve a specific numerical goal.
Okay. So yeah, I'm just trying to make, clearly delineate. I think that there's a state requirement, 10%. As the state measures it, we're at 13.3 or 16.1 if we close the permit. There is separately, we're saying, hey, but in the town of Concord, we would like to have a town requirement, and here's how we're going to measure that town requirement.
That's right, and that because we are above the 10% at 13% or 16, we have control over our 40B destiny, that there will not be, if there is a comprehensive permit filed under 40B, it will be because that's what the town wants to do in order to have the local zoning not be an impediment to a town project, which is what we, that's what. So a friendly 40B.
Got it.
No unfriendly, no unfriendly 40Bs. So.
Got it. Thank you. That's helpful,
Okay.
sort of clarity of the delineation. Thanks.
And
Thank
I know
you so much, Keith.
I've gone over time, and thank you,
Yeah, no, but that's
Elisa, for the
fine.
hook.
Thank you so much
Okay.
for the presentation. That was really helpful. I think right now we're going to turn to the MCI board, and we really want to hear from you and agency, the consultant. I think for this topic, we'll hear a brief presentation from you, and then I think it's really an opportunity for all the housing groups to provide their feedback. So we want to leave plenty of time for discussion as well. So if you would like to share your screen.
Hello, everyone. Apologies, I wanted to make sure my computer was completely charged before this conversation. Okay. Right. Okay, let's give it a moment. Hi, everyone. My name is Rhiannon Sinclair, and I have the delight of getting to work with the MCI Advisory Board, many of whom are seated in this room or are online, to consider the future of the MCI Concord site. So we're going to share a very brief slide deck. As Alyssa mentioned, we want to spend as much of our time in discussion as possible. We have a few questions at the end of this deck, many of which Keith actually already answered, so hopefully we'll still have an animated conversation about the goals of this group. But without further ado, I'm just going to go through this and begin. All right. Whoops, this is, sorry, one moment, I apologize. Sharing the wrong one. Okay. Sorry about that. We had a meeting this morning, and so I am already starting to mix up my slide decks. They start to look all the same. All right, so we're gonna talk about the site overview. I think many of you already know this, but just for those who are unfamiliar with the project, we'll talk about that. Want to dig into an overview of our process. Speak a little bit to community outreach. It's wonderful to see so many familiar faces of those who came to public workshops a couple of weeks ago, and so we'll share a little bit about what came out of those conversations, and then briefly share some of what we're talking about right in this moment together with the advisory board, which is the start to assembling what are called scenarios. Okay, so the MCI Concord site is, does anyone not know what it is? Do you want to raise your hand if you don't know what it is? Okay, so I'll make it brief. It is a former prison within the town of Concord. It encompasses about a little bit over 70 acres, give or take, depending on if you include a portion of the site which will continue to be used for agricultural land. But this site exists right at the infamous circle of Route 2 and Commonwealth Avenue, and is currently in a position where the town of Concord has an opportunity to rethink its future. So again, this is that site. You have the intersection of Route 2, Commonwealth Avenue, and the two major parcels that exist on either side of Commonwealth Avenue. So what is captured within this site boundary, at least for the purposes of the discussion today and the purposes of our work with the advisory board, includes the MBTA subdistrict overlay, which includes the Junction Village site. It includes the Concord Cemetery, as well as the agricultural spaces, all of the facilities that are associated with MCI Concord, as well as the wastewater treatment facility. So to give you an idea of the overall process, the state has been working on this project far before this moment. We are just a tiny little piece of a universe and a timeline that has been going on for over a year now, and that will continue to extend long past this moment. So where we are right now is in that site planning orange and green bar. And that is where the Division of Capital Asset Management and Maintenance has decided to dispose of the parcel. They're engaging the town of Concord to think about what does the town want, what does the town need, and what would most benefit the town in the reinvestment of this space. So once this work is done, which I'll show you a little bit more about what our timeline is, once this work is done, there will be a level of technical analysis and a development of a new zoning overlay or code for this particular site. And then DCAM, the state, will go about an RFP process to consider the disposal of the site. Once that has been determined, once we have an understanding of the entity or entities that will go about the redevelopment of the space, then just as Keith has talked about, when we think about construction processes, there will be a permitting process, there will be a construction process, and because of the size of this space, it will likely be phased over many years. So this is our schedule. We've been working together with the advisory board since March, and we'll continue that work through the end of June. And we are really focused on pulling all of the work that the advisory board has done to date, which is quite a compendium of work, alongside the work of other commissions, the work of the town in their own planning efforts, and then also the voices of the community to assemble an understanding of the site today, to identify those individual visions for the future of the site, and then to start to assemble 3 scenarios for what the site can be in the future. At the end of June, what we will be doing is completing a deliverable or a series of reports that communicate both the economic feasibility of the site, the impact of the site's redevelopment, opportunities for what the land use and zoning of the site can be, as well as a more visionary document that shares back what we've learned from this community. So when we talk about outreach, what we've been asked to do is really to make sure that we are reaching as many people as possible within that 5-month time frame, which is no small feat, and so it's required the messaging and the hard work of the many advisory board members in this group. And so that's meant outreach to commissions and organizations like the organizations represented at this roundtable. It has meant sharing postcards in a variety of venues throughout the town. We had public workshops 2 weeks ago with over 150 attendees, which was really great to see. Almost 2,000 website visits. If you haven't visited the website, please do. It's a great resource. It also means we'll get past 2,000 visits, which would be amazing. And then also, if you missed the workshop, you can engage in a survey online, which asks a lot of the same questions about the future. And so I'm not going to share all of the analysis from the workshops, but here's one one piece of data that I thought would be of particular relevance to this group. We had a series of, we had 6 different analysis topics that we asked questions around. One of them was called Community and Culture, and it very much focused on housing and what it meant to provide for Concord's community. And what we learned was that 40% of people who engaged with this board would like to prioritize attainable housing. And the second most important to folks was to support options for aging in place. And then also third in line in terms of what was most important, what was a priority, was to provide a range of housing sizes that support different household needs. And so that survey will continue to be open. If you would like to have a conflicting argument against attainable housing or would like to support attainable housing, you're welcome to take that survey and share your own ideas. You can go to the website, which is mci-concord.org. And you can also plan to participate in our next workshop. So on May 28th, next Wednesday, we will have another round of public workshops where we will be digging into what I'm going to share in a moment, which is the scenarios. We will be meeting with folks May 28th from 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. and 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. As kind of an open house. And the purpose of that open house will be for you to start to assemble what you imagine, what your vision for the future of this site will be. And if you are not able to join in person, it'll be at Gurrow Park. But if you're not able to join in person, we'd love to have you online. Of course, this is all on our website, but would love for you to join us on Zoom, May 29th from 7 o'clock to 8 p.m. And we, of course, will have another survey that will enable you, if you can't make either meeting, to weigh in via at your own time via that survey instrument. So before we get into discussion, what I want to highlight here is that this kind of where we are in this moment is starting to shift from analysis and understand the vision for the site and understand how that vision starts to land in place. And so that place isn't just that over 70-acre plot of land. That 70-acre plot of land has some restrictions to it already. Those restrictions include limitations on what can be built where. That means that within 200 feet of the river, we can't develop anything because of important easements that restrict development along rivers, as well as an important easement around your wetlands. And so there are a couple wetlands on the site that we can't develop on. But what that leaves us with is about 45 acres of total developable acres, minus the wastewater treatment facility, as well as that river frontage and wetland frontage. And so now, in this moment, today, we are starting the conversation about what are all the things that could happen here. And so what is on this slide right now is within that 45-acre space, what could we imagine the future of the site could be? And it ranges all the way from doing nothing. We could leave it as is, and the site will not be used or changed, but it has cost implications. Or we could start to think about the variety of uses that could happen here. And so on May 5th, what we focused on for that workshop was to understand the implications of housing. What would housing do to the future of the site, and how could housing support the site's future? And that was based on a kind of market-driven approach to the future of the site. Today, together with the advisory board, we focused on what we heard from the public, what we heard from our workshops, what we heard from the advisory board in their own workshop. And that included things like more of a lower intensity of development, which meant focusing on an investment in a park or more public uses, as well as engaging in or completing the Junction Village project. And that particular project would require a little bit more public investment to be realized, versus at the center, a mix of more commercial uses and a commercial center. And then again, circling back to the idea of really thinking critically about housing and how we can make housing happen here. And so those are the three that we've been digging into together with the advisory board. But just to share with you this idea that the scenarios can exist along a spectrum, and we're still trying to think through where we sit within that spectrum, but are curious to have that conversation with you all today as well. So I've shared a lot with you, and we have a couple of questions on our end as well. I think, just as I mentioned previously, Keith, you answered many of them, but what we thought we'd engage you all in was a conversation about your own kind of housing successes and what you think about when you think of housing success, just so that we have a sense or can have our own precedents for what we could imagine the future of this place could be. We'd also like to know how you see the MCI site contributing to your goals that you identified within the housing production plan, and appreciate you sharing some of the highlights from the housing production plan goals and changes you made there. And then last but certainly not least, we know that there are deed restrictions to Junction Village, and we were curious if you all had any thoughts about what the future of the deed restriction might be, and if there is an opportunity to reconsider the deed restriction to more fully integrate housing throughout the MCI parcels. So those were our questions. Happy to let the conversation take us elsewhere too.
That's a great presentation. Thank you so much, Rhiannon. So I think right now we'll open it up and take, if you want to answer those questions, or you have feedback or questions specifically for agency or the MCI board, I think this is a good opportunity to open it up. So who would like to go first?
Well, I guess somebody ought to.
Yes, go ahead.
My reaction on changing Junction Village is it all depends on what we change it to. As a housing advocate, I'm certainly open to having housing elsewhere in addition, and perhaps less here if you want to do something else, but I wouldn't want to give up the affordable housing restriction on Junction Village until it's clear what else gets done where. So that's why I think the town's multi-site planning is particularly important. Certainly happy potentially to see affordability above 80%, potentially larger units, and certainly willing to move it around on the site, but I wouldn't want to give up the units we could build on Junction Village until it's clear where else we get them in town. Thank you.
Thank you.
Peter Lowett, member of the MCI Advisory Board, speaking on my own. So I just wanted to say I really like the aspirational goals that are being made to the housing production plan. Just want people to know that we're not going to put all of the targeted units into MCI. The idea is that they be spread all over the community, and that's one of the wonders of the select board doing their town parcel inventory, so that we can explore other places where housing and other needed facilities can go within the town. So I know that the CPA, that the affordable housing groups put aside some money out of CHDC's request for planning for Junction Village, and many of you know that our state funding comes to a hard stop on June 30th, and we were wondering, as the MCI Advisory Board, whether or not some of that funds might be used to maintain the momentum and maintain the conversations with the community over the course of the summer, or whether that money is just restricted to the Junction Village parcel. It sort of ties back to Frank's comments. And another thing that I would like the select board to do, and maybe agency to clarify on your timeline under DCAM. My understanding was that DCAM was not going to close on the property with the developer until local permits have been secured, which gives the town an extra check and balance in terms of the redevelopment of the parcel. So if you can clarify that and pass it on to agency, so that might be explained. And for those of you who can't wait to participate in the survey, there are postcards going in the mail this week, so you'll be able to join in and scan the QR code and get right to the site and answer those survey questions. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Oh, go. Should I go? Great.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Mary Hartman. I'm on the Affordable Housing Trust, and I'm also on the Select Board, and I'm speaking as a member of the Select Board, but I'm speaking for myself. So when I look at the continuum that you presented up there, for me, the mix of housing and some type of mixed use or some type of revenue generation is important to me, not just for the revenue, but also to create a sense of community, because I've been to developments where it's just housing and everybody stays inside. So if people can mingle and have something. So I'm wondering, when you do your economic feasibility analyses, I think you look at it from, is this attractive to a developer? But do you also quantify what the impact will be to the town?
Yes, so a fiscal impact study is part of it, and it'll be included for the 3 scenarios that we do that deep dive as part of. And so it's not just about how do we make it work for whatever
Right.
entity takes it over, it's
Right.
also how do we make it work and ensure that that vision aligns with what the town needs.
Excellent, thank
Yep.
you.
My name is Stephanie Kroback. I am on the Concord Housing Authority. I'm speaking on behalf of myself here. We talked a bit about process and the different scenarios, which I think that's kind of a clever visual. I really like the way you laid that out. My question relates to the who. Who, after all of the input, who decides? I guess that's what I'm trying to understand. You've got a timeline, lots of input, and then what? By whom?
Yep. And just to clarify, for the who decides, do you mean who decides where we go from here?
The ultimate path.
Yeah. That is a great question. I'd like to say that the way that the RFQ by the advisory board was written and the way that we've always thought about our relationship to this work is that the town residents, the town stakeholders, all of the people that relate to this place and contribute to this place and making it a community, they are the ultimate deciders. And so the purpose of this work is to create a vision. And that vision is meant to be shared with DCAM and is meant to be shared with the town with a capital T to ensure that that vision is what is represented in the future development of this place. I don't know if that's too high-level thinking, but that was my understanding. I don't know, John, if you want to.
Thinking more around,
Yeah.
Is it town meeting, is it select board, is it?
Both.
Yeah.
Both.
Hi, John Boynton from the advisory board. The advisory board was charged by the select board to advise them on what to do with the property. So our role is merely advisory. So in that sense, we are gathering as much information, as much input, and essentially defining various scenarios so that we can go to the select board when our time is up and say, based on all the work we've done and all the conversations we've had, here's what we recommend as a path forward. At that point, the select board will decide how to carry that forward, okay? I don't know what they'll do, but recognize too that the town does not own the land and will probably never own the land. Ultimately, it's up to DCAM to decide what it wants to do. But they have very kindly come to us with a lot of encouragement from our state representatives and state senator, and basically given us the opportunity to drive this process. So we don't know exactly what will happen or how it will play out, but the advisory board is advisory. The select board will ultimately receive our report and decide how to proceed.
So I'm Mark Howell. I'm on the select board and also on the advisory board. And I will just dive into this. There are two main inputs to the decision. So DCAM is going to eventually issue an RFP for development proposals. And they have allowed us the opportunity to contribute requirements that will go into that RFP, which hopefully are reflective of the result of this scenario building process. So ideally, what we're about here is trying to lay out what our priorities are, and at the same time that we're defining what those priorities are, we're also outlining what kind of zoning the town is likely to implement for this parcel. So right now, the zoning is industrial, which means that they have only a certain limited set of uses and not particularly economically attractive set of uses. So they're depending on us to create some zoning which hopefully makes the parcel easier to dispose of. One of the pieces of information that we have as part of our economic analysis here that agency has been doing is that there are very significant costs to bringing this parcel back to zero, say, let's call it unimproved developable land. And there are even more significant costs associated with having things like wastewater capacity and utility services and the kinds of things that a developer really wants to make a project actually attractive. So at least from our perspective right now, we have this opportunity to create some vision and guidance that ends up in the RFP that DCAM will issue for development. And then we have a hard regulatory set of really strictures that we can put in place through the zoning that we ultimately decide to do. And so this process is designed to inform both of those things. And then on the back end, as Rhea mentioned, there is the permitting. And so DCAM has indicated that they would likely try to condition the actual closing of a contract to dispose of the property on the successful permitting under the zoning that we've already enacted at that point, which gives us another opportunity. But as anyone who's been in those kinds of discussions knows, permitting is probably the last place you really want to be trying to make vision changes, because then you're sort of fighting over what does the zoning have to say. So by getting out in front and doing this project, we're hoping to have a much more sort of harmonious path forward.
Great, thanks so much for the comment.
Can I just emphasize one thing that Mark said? You said a lot there. The zoning comes to town meeting. So if you're looking at the zoning, so we'll have.
Yeah,
I just
going to echo what Mary was saying. So the town is going to have an opportunity. The town is going to have an opportunity to weigh in on whether or not we've captured the vision that agency and MCI have created that we're going to advise the select board on. And whether we've captured that vision in the zoning and perhaps development agreements and other agreements that we reach with DCAM, which we will bring to town meeting in 2026. And then we get a second bite at the apple, which is sort of a less effective, but it's in the local permitting of it. So the town has some say in this, and it was structured by the select board to make sure that it had some say. So.
And we have some people online that I'd like to let speak as well. So Stephen Bader, would you like to speak?
Thank you, Stephen Bader from the Concord Housing Authority, but again, speaking for myself, basically, couple observations, questions, points. The slide indicated, or the speaker indicated that DCAM was likely to pick one developer for the entire site. And I can see how that makes sense if we go with one of these, the higher density mixed use neighborhood campus scenarios, that one developer would probably make sense to build the whole thing out over a number of years. But if we go with one of the mid-density mixed-use developments or lower density, I would think that multiple developers or choosing multiple developers, giving them their acreage, but say you develop it. That would open it up for many more participants because you don't need the same expertise and size of company that you would need if you were doing one company were doing the entire site. So this may not be the right venue to urge DCAM what to do, but I think we can and should express a preference to have multiple developers involved in the process to the extent that that's possible. That's my editorial comment on that. The other thing I wanted to point out is that the use of attainable housing, the word attainable is, to my knowledge, not defined anywhere, but it is not exactly the same thing as affordable, which is defined, nor is it the same necessarily as attainable as that word has been used by the Newbury Court petitioners under their separate article for retirement community zoning that's coming up to our June town meeting. So attainable I think everybody has some idea of what it might mean, but it's just reminding people that it's somewhat squishy definitionally for us at this point.
Yeah.
And lastly, one of the responses was to talk about recent successes. And I think that what the Housing Authority has done and been involved in recently that I consider a success is our partnership with other small groups. And this is not building at scale, certainly, but to be able to work with Habitat for Humanity or to be able to work with the Concord Housing Development Corporation as a partner where our expertise on property management and maintenance and tenant selection can be brought to bear, recognizing that we don't have the development experience. But I think those partnerships across agencies and organizations in town bring out the best of all of the participants. And to the extent, again, that that's possible going forward, I'd love to see more of that. Thank you.
Thank you. We have another participant, Dan Gainsborough. Would you like to speak?
Sure, thank you. I was just going to respond to one of Stefan's questions, the first one. I'm Dan Gainsborough, co-chair of the MCI Advisory Board. And so I think, I don't remember specifically the comment that was made, but I will tell you that there's a high probability that there'll be a master developer and then smaller sub-developers. And so your point is well taken.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Terry Ackerman, I'm on the select board, but speaking for myself, I'm looking at these diagrams and they're really useful. It's a really good way to think it through. And I'm assuming they're just hypothetical, right? Like, it looks like you've picked certain ones to focus on, but for example, I don't see one up there with all 4 colors. Like, I was thinking we may end up with open space and community civic use and housing and commercial. So that's still a possibility, right? These aren't the only possibilities. Okay.
These are not the only possibilities, and I think your point is well taken. It came up in our conversation today with the advisory board that it did feel like there could be an option that includes all of them. And so we don't imagine that these are the only scenarios that we're looking at. We also have the public workshops next week. If you have time next week and would like to join us, it will be an activity in you assembling your own version of these for us to understand, what are the town sentiments or ideas about what this could look like.
Hi, Cameron McKenna, member of the Select Board. Just following up on that. For me, it would be interesting to see examples of what has happened in other places, because I mean, I'm just going to speak for myself, but I see like Legacy Place, I see like Maynard and Digital, I see the Natick Mall, which are the three that I can think of that were developed like in, you know, the last couple decades around here. And they all look and feel pretty similar to me, right, in terms of what they are. So if there are other examples that we might be able to provide that kind of say, hey, look, you know what, across this spectrum, you know, here's what some other things look like, it might just help. I know it would certainly help me kind of think through and visualize, like, hey, what are we talking about when we say that kind of thing? So. Yeah. So it's just a thought on like maybe showing some pictures or some examples for people to see what that spectrum might look like.
If you come to our public workshop, there will be many examples that we're excited to share with you. Yeah, we were trying to keep it to as short of a presentation as possible, but absolutely hear you. And examples help kind of ground what these little squares look like. It's really hard to visualize what a square is.
Yeah, and then even along with those examples, like hey, this one required a bunch of public investment in order to sort of make that a reality. Or this one was, this is what happens when you go just market driven. Here's like 3 examples of what happens when you kind of just let the sort of market decide.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yep.
Any other thoughts?
Hi, Julie McClure. I'm a member of CHDC, but I'm speaking for myself. One thing that came to mind that I feel many people in the community have mentioned to me when we talk about MCI Concord is a desire for forward-thinking transportation plan integrated with this site. And I don't know that I've seen that specified, so I hope you might be able to remark on it.
Of course. So in the analysis that we did about a month ago now, we had 6 different topics. We included, there was kind of economics and feasibility, which was like digging into like what can the market support, what does the town need. There was a topic that was community and culture, so digging into the history of the site and how we think about the community that lives here today. There was one that was energy and infrastructure, so thinking about sustainability goals alongside what the physical infrastructure on the site is and what the site can support. There were 2 others, one about, I believe, the history of the site, and then also transportation. So on the transportation side, we're working with a wonderful consultant by the name of Bureau Happold, who has been digging into what we call mode splits. So like how do people commute or get around Concord today? What could this site possibly unlock in terms of transportation opportunities, like the train station or the bike path? And then also, what are some of the ways that you can imagine people could get around, taking advantage of the infrastructure that exists or opportunities for that infrastructure, to really think beyond what's possible in terms of mobility? So that is absolutely something that we plan to include as part of this thinking and will be in the final report.
Follow-up comment, I hope it is not going to be a sea of parking lot. That's my main concern.
That is our hope as well, but stay tuned. Parking does drive a lot of decisions, so.
Well, thank you so much for coming, Brianna. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, we have time.
I'm Eve Eisenberg, Vice Chair of the CPC, but I'm here by myself, speaking for myself and also as a small business owner. An interesting conversation happened at the Concord Business Partnership meeting a little while ago, and what came up out of it reminds me that while visioning is super important, in my office we also do a lot of visioning, but we're also constrained by our requirements, and Concord, as I'm sure you know, has some infrastructure issues. Not to mention the biggest one in my mind is the sewer problem and what the wastewater treatment plant, what will happen to that, and what will happen to our current system, I think is a super important thing to get advice about from you guys. And to that end, maybe a question for Keith. How does the Novo and all the 40B projects, how are they dealing with their sewer capacity?
Novo has a sewer hookup, and the others don't. Novo has a wastewater, is going to tie into this town sewer system, but the other 40B is not.
I'll just quickly mention also, as far as the wastewater goes, the state legislation required that the state offer the town the wastewater treatment facility on MCI. And that's actually called out as a separate track, and we're given some deadlines. They have formally made that offer. The select board has responded. It said we're interested. There is an activity that's going on through the Public Works Department to evaluate that, understand what the costs of bringing that up to a usable facility. It's been under-maintained, to be as charitable as I can. So that negotiation over the wastewater treatment facility is something that's actually already on the verge of getting going as we've collected that information so that we can really address that critical infrastructure need.
Great. So I think it's time to move on to the next topic, unfortunately. This has been a really great discussion, and thank you so much to the MCI Advisory Board for coming to share their work and give us an update and allow us to provide feedback. So next up, I think we're going to hear an update on the land use matrix, next steps with the working group.
I'll do that. Megan? You and I are going to do this one, the land use matrix group? Great, okay. As Peter Lowett mentioned earlier, there's a lot more land coming available to the town of Concord to develop. MCI is going to give us, I think, 45 acres. We've got other parcels coming on board. If we decide to move ahead with the ownership of 2229 Main Street, that's another 46 acres. The Peabody School is 3 different parcels, but a total of 20 acres. Junction Village is 14. The Harrington House is 4. The landfill is another, I don't know the acreage, and we also have Ripley. So what we're looking at is we've got a lot of land coming on board, and how can we use it? And also, we also have a lot of land right now that might not be utilized to the best use. So we're putting together something that we're calling a matrix, which looks at what are the lands that are becoming available or we are currently own that could be repurposed. And then across the other axis, we're looking at what are some of the uses that we see coming down the pike. We know that we have a use for a new DPW site. We know that we have a use for public safety. We know that we have not invested in those the way we should over the last several years. They're in failure mode at this point. So we've got to find solutions for those important town departments. So we're looking at it as a matrix. We're trying to look at different matches. For example, maybe DPW belongs at MCI. I'm not advocating for this. I'm just saying maybe it does. What are the pros and the cons of that match, right? And if we did that, what do we do with the land that DPW currently owns? So this is a complex process of looking at what are the pros and the cons of each match between a use and the available land, and then what are some of the domino effects? What are the timing? When is this land going to be available? And also, how are we going to fund it? Right? So it's a complex process. We're putting together a group of people. We've got 9 voting members and 2 ex officio or non-voting members that are going to be working over the next 12 months. And Megan and I have worked together on a work plan to basically wrestle with some of these issues and make recommendations again to the select board. So we asked several committees in town to recommend who should be on the board. So rather than having the select board simply appoint people, we went and we asked other committees in town, please nominate someone for the board. And so far we have from the Public Works Commission, Sven Weber. From the MCI Advisory Board, it will be Scott Bates. From the 2229 Main Street Advisory Board, it'll be Paul Bohm, but he will be an ex officio and non-voting. From the Concord Municipal Affordable Housing Trust will be Keith Bergman. From the Economic Vitality Committee, Mark Martinez. From the Recreation Committee, Phil Griffiths. And then we still have some that need to be determined. One will be who from the Select Board should be on this working group. The school committee elected to wait until after their board shifted after town meeting to identify the best person. We're waiting for the planning board to nominate someone, and we're also discussing an at-large member. So hopefully the working group will get going and hitting the ground right after town meeting, and it's going to be a fast-moving group, I hope, and we hope to have something in 12 months. So I'm willing to take any questions. I think I oversimplified it. It's a complex exercise, but we need to get started. And I think one of the things we're going to do to actually get started is have a site visit. So all of the members of the board are going to actually go and take a look at these parcels. So how many have been at the landfill, how many have been at Ripley, the Peabody School, so that we get, kind of on the ground. We're following the CPC model, which I think is great, to actually take site visits and get people familiar with what are we talking about. So we've been working on that. We have the charge approved, and hopefully we'll hit the ground after town meeting. Are there any questions? Megan, did I? Great. Any questions on this?
Thanks, Mary.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mary. So next, I think we'll hear an update on the goal setting with Massachusetts Housing Partnership. Or
Well, we have Shelley Gehring, who's on the call, and if anyone has any questions, I'll just say that. Sorry, we do have Shelley Gehring on the call from MHP. I did show a slide which had what our proposed goals are, and we've been getting a lot of feedback during this discussion, which is one of the things that when Shelley meets with a small group, she always wants us to then test what we've come up with a larger group. So what I'm hoping the report back to Shelley is that we're floating the ideas of our goals, and I think we're getting some good reception to the direction that we're headed here. So thanks, Shelley, for working with the trust. And Shelley's here with us all year, and we'll be continuing to fine-tune those goals. We hope to put specifically not only let's say a large numerical goal of 200, but within that, how many are going to be affordable at, say, 80%, or at the other amounts that our funds are limited to, 100, 120, or 150%. And so that's the sort of feedback I think that we'll be looking for as we continue. How many of those are ownership versus rental, and I'll just say, me personally, I'm agnostic about where the housing should go. I think the two processes that have been set up by the select board will determine the where, and I'm not personally looking at fighting over any particular site as much as I am fighting for the totality of putting the housing where the community says it should go. So thanks, Shelley. Okay.
So I think we'll move to the housing production plan. We have some updates on projects that are in process or are about to start. So I think we'll start with the Housing Development Corporation. If you'd like to give an update, Julie.
Hi, Julie McClure from Concord Housing Development Corporation. A number of people who are present were there for a very happy day that happened recently. We had a groundbreaking at 406 Old Marlborough Road, which is the Assabet River Bluff site. There are so many partners that are making this possible. Some of them are present. It's not going to be totally inclusive of all the partners, but I'm thinking the Housing Authority, who are sitting right here, select board members, Municipal Affordable Housing Trust, the CPC, and there are a number of local organizations that are also sending volunteer groups or offering additional support. And Habitat for Humanity has posted a sign there, so if you walk past Old Marlborough Road, you'll get a sense of all the different local organizations that are involved with this project. It's going to be 5 affordable homes, 2 rental, and 3 ownership in a condo association. There have been many meetings with the parties that are settling the affairs of recording the deeds and making sure everything is crossed and dotted appropriately. And that's required many months and many meetings. And I'm so grateful to the volunteer hours and to our legal teams who have worked with us through those things. That's been painstaking in its detail. And we are so looking forward to more opportunities to deliver housing and to create spaces for households in our community. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Julie. What a great success story, too. So next, I'm just going to give a quick update on the 91B Main Street project. The town has been coordinating with MassDOT and the potential purchase of this property. So just as a reminder, the conceptual plan is for 4 units and 2 townhouses, which would be developed for workforce housing, home ownership units at 120% of AMI. The purchase price, in discussing this with MassDOT further, would be $620,000, and that's based on an appraisal that MassDOT has completed. This is less than the town's initial appraisal of $690,000, which is a good thing because it's quite a bit less than that. MassDOT was not able to negotiate lower than their appraisal because of constraints with their funding. There is $500,000 dedicated for the purchase through ARPA money, but it would require additional money for the purchase price. So a couple options for this is an option would be for the town to purchase the property from MassDOT with funding from the ARPA and potentially trust money as well. So this process, obviously would take several months to coordinate the purchase. And then next step would be to develop an RFP for a developer and potentially give the land for free with a plan for the development of affordable housing at 120% AMI. And likely there would be some level of subsidy needed for the development as well. And another option would be, and this would be similar to the model for the Assabet River homes, would be that the town trust could also grant funds to CHDC, who would develop the property so the town wouldn't potentially need to take title during this process of the property. And the CHDC would then do an RFP for the property, select a developer, and giving the land and a potential additional subsidy for the development. So that's kind of where we stand now, and I just wanted to give an update on that.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So the price is $620, and you're saying that even with that much, we might still have to subsidize the development?
Potentially, depending on the developer, it would be similar to what had happened with Assabet River Homes development, where there was a combination of different funds and subsidies to make that development happen.
Have we done an economic feasibility analysis to find out if this would be attractive to a developer, if the land was free?
Yes, I have a preliminary feasibility analysis that I'll be presenting to the trust at their next meeting.
Thank you.
Sure. And then if there are updates from the Concord Housing Authority?
Anybody who knows me knows I don't pass on an opportunity to say something. So claim partial credit and appreciation for our small role in the Assabet Bluff project and taking on those 2 new SHI units and 2 more rental units in our portfolio now. The other news is that maintaining and improving what we have already is not as sexy as new buildings, but it's important. And some of you may recall I've mentioned the air source heat pump project at Everett Gardens that we've received state environmental efficiency funding for, and we get an additional approval of another $300,000 round numbers to bring the total for that project to close to 1.5 million to add air source heat pump, air conditioning and heating for units, most of which are 50 plus years old and don't have air conditioning or have through the wall inefficient air conditioners. So it's an energy efficiency upgrade and it's a quality of life upgrade for the tenants in those buildings. And that project is going to be getting underway this summer. Thank you.
Great, thanks so much. So I think I'm sorry, go ahead.
Ed Larner on the CHA Housing Authority and also as the representative to for CPC for housing. I'm a little bit disappointed in the fact that we're not really going to go into the various items that are on the warrant that affect housing. I know it's too late really to get anything in.
I think it's the next on the agenda.
We're going to do it. We're going to do that.
I'm sorry?
We are going to do that.
Oh, we're going to.
It's our next item on the agenda.
Yep.
So,
Okay.
Yeah.
And we can get to it like right now.
Okay, thanks.
Do we have updates on the zoning related, the housing related zoning items, either from the planning board or if anyone would like to speak to those?
The foundation is actually sponsoring the article, which would, and it was developed by Matt Johnson, who may want to speak. But the idea is to make planned residential developments a little more attractive by enabling some of the units to be at higher, but still, levels of income that are within the range that Keith talks about. What we found is that by requiring the mix of very low income units that we have now, that by and large developers won't build a PRD. There have been only one or two in recent years, and they'll actually choose to build what they can do by right rather than doing a PRD. So this is an experiment. We would permit the units which bring the bonus to be at slightly higher income levels, and we'll see if it works. The good news, Mary, is if it works, there's no public money at all involved.
Thank you.
There is one Article 939, which is the ADU bylaw. And then there is also Article 46, which is the citizen petition for the continuing care zoning that Deaconess has proposed. So that is another.
Well, that's. Yeah. I think Wendy should talk to that.
Okay. Great.
So the Article 46 is the Deaconess zoning change. I'll just say that the Deaconess organization has been meeting with the neighbors, and there are a number of revisions they expect to submit on the zoning article itself, addressing setbacks and height, as well as changes, restrictions on Old Marlborough Road itself in terms of access points, et cetera. So progress has definitely been made there, and as you've heard, the Select Board is also in discussions with Deaconess around a memorandum of agreement, but that the details are not ready for disclosure.
I just wanted to make a quick comment about Article 33, which asks for an appropriation from free cash of $250,000 to continue the MCI Concord planning effort. The point here is that the monies that the state provided through the FY25 budget process earmarks will expire on June 30th. And as it stands right now, we don't actually have any committed source of funding to continue the work that we're trying to do here, to develop the scenarios, to come up with zoning. The Select Board has allocated 100, or actually the town manager has allocated 100,000 towards a zoning effort for MCI, but that from ARPA funds, which also has an expiration date of December, but we need access to more general planning funding. And so while it's not exactly a funding for affordable housing directly, I think you can all appreciate, based on the presentation you saw today, how integrated it is with our housing plans. And so I would just ask the housing community to consider supporting Article 33.
Article what?
Article 47, the community preservation.
Right. So the other update is the community preservation funding, which is Article
47.
Article 47. So two main items to do with housing would be the CPA funding for the Concord Municipal Affordable Housing Trust for $740,000, and the funding for the Regional Housing Services Office, the annual funding that's provided of $43,500. So that is something that helps to support the work of our contractor there that supports our affordable housing efforts. So I think.
Did Eve want to say anything about that?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, thank you.
The Community Preservation Committee supports the Housing Trust. But, I mean, it's been great working with you, Keith, and
Right.
your presentations are always spectacular. Other than that, I mean, it was clear that's what we were going to do. 500,000 of it, 240,000 of it was reclaimed money, and 500,000 of it was new money. Not really sure what else should be said about that.
Yeah. I think what we might want to all be aware of in the room is that this Article 47 is not in the consent calendar. So it will not be voted on in the unanimous motions that are made in the first half hour of town meeting. It will be made at the end of the third night of town meeting. So, and I think that judgment was made because there was a new use. There were lots of questions being asked about whether CPA funds could be used for the what's it called?
Amenities.
The amenities building
Right.
at the high school. So because that's an issue and because that would engender a lot of discussion, there will be that opportunity for debate at town meeting on this article, which is otherwise non-controversial.
I just wanted to discuss the percentages of funding between housing and the other ends. This year's article number 47, 55% of it goes to housing, 40% goes to open space, and 5% goes to preservation. So preservation has been getting kind of the short end on everything. I know there's been some controversy about the amenities building, and the school committee did come to us to see if we had additional funding available this year. And so now they're on Article 13 for the amenities building, and if they don't get it passed, I think they'll probably come back to CPC for the funding next year. And so I guess we would prefer to have it, funded to the school board under the article that they put on the warrant item. I feel like housing is not we're competing with the other two funding sources. It's more that the need has been so strong for housing in the last few years, and I'm afraid the school board is going to make the same argument that the need that they have, for this amenities building is going to take it. And so I'm hoping that the Article 13 does pass, so we won't have this issue for next year. So, thank you.
Thanks. I just want to clarify one thing is that we are meeting our 10% historic preservation requirement, even though we don't have enough projects really to fund in there by setting aside money for next year.
Okay, great.
Could
Well,
I say one more thing?
oh yeah, please.
In support of Article 47, those funds will make more projects like what we have just achieved at Assabet River Homes possible, and it is so special what we're building there. I really encourage everyone to learn about it if you haven't already. We hope to do more projects like this that involve the cooperation of many groups. And one more thing, the Regional Housing Services Office portion of this has been a big driver of getting us to the finish line. So thank you for taking my comment on that.
Great. Well, thank you so much for coming. I think we need to close the meeting by, we have to do a vote.
Well, I would say that as our convener, you could declare the meeting adjourned.
The meeting is adjourned.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. Well done. Thank you.